Hello student, we are studying photovoltaic system module. In that we have seen different concept about photovoltaic system and also study the working principle of the photovoltaic system. In our previous video we have seen about the advantages and disadvantages of the solar energy conversion, and in this video we will start with the next point, that is different types of the solar cell. We studied in our previous videos how solar cell works, but how it is constructed. Depending on the material which is used in the construction of the solar cell, there are different types, and also depending on the junction formation, the solar cell classified into different types. So let's see the types of the solar cells. Apart from the differences in the nature of the semiconductor used, the following different cell configurations have been used, such as, that means difference in the nature of the semiconductor used. That means the type is also depend on the material which is used in the solar cell, that is the semiconductor material, but also the second one is the depending on the configuration, that is the formation of the junction. Depending on that there are different types of the solar cell. So let's see. First type is the p-n homojunction solar cells. Second one is the p-n heterojunction solar cells. Next one is the metal semiconductor Schottky junction solar cells. Fourth one is the p-n multi-junction solar cells. Fifth one MIS, that means metal insulator semiconductor solar cells, and the last one is the SIS, that is the semiconductor insulator semiconductor solar cells. In first type, that is the p-n homojunction solar cells, in that p and n type semiconductor material are used for the construction of the solar cell, and the junction between these semiconductor material is the homojunction. That means the material which is present both outside the both the material or the side of the junction is the same, and in heterojunction the material which present at behind near the junction is different. And third one is in third one metal semiconductor Schottky junction, that means there is a there is a semiconductor material and another is a metal, and we know that for when metal and semiconductor gets is in when metal and semiconductor contact with each other, or there is a formation of the Schottky junction. That means if we consider two semiconductor, and when we these two semiconductor placed near to each other, then there is a formation of the p-n junction. Similarly, when we place metal and semiconductor in contact, then there is a formation of Schottky junction, or it is also known as the rectifying junction. Fourth is the p-n multi-junction solar diodes. That means in that multi-junction, that means the more than one junction is formed in that material due to different materials are used in that. MIS, that is a metal insulator semiconductor. In between semiconductor and metal, the insulator is a sandwich. So the name indicates that how the junction is formed in that solar cell. Next is the semiconductor insulator semiconductor solar cells. In that the insulator material is a sandwiched between two semiconductor material. So depending on that, this type, that is a SIS, semiconductor insulator semiconductor solar cells. Now let's see in brief one by one. First is the p-n homojunction solar cells. In homogeneous p-n junction, the semiconductor material on both sides of the junction is the same. That means in a the semiconductor material on both sides of the junction, that means we know that the junction is formed between two semiconductor material, but these two semiconductor material is the same in the p-n homojunction solar cell. Thus the band gap remains same throughout the cell material. That means these two material are same, so the band gap of these two material is also same. So the band gap is same throughout the cell material. Second is the p-n heterojunction solar cells. In a heterojunction p-n junction, two dissimilar semiconductor material such as group second and fourth compound semiconductors with the closely matching crystal lattice are used to form the junction. We know that periodic table has a different groups, but in particular group, that is the group second and group fourth, there is a compound semiconductor material, and these material have closely matching crystal lattice and used to form the junction. And in p-n heterojunction solar cell, the semiconductor material is dissimilar. That means two semiconductor materials are used at the side of the junction. So dissimilar material, that is hetero means not similar, but homo means same and hetero means different. So the two dissimilar semiconductor material used in a p-n heterojunction solar cell. Next type is the band gap of top material exposed to sunlight is wider than the band gap of material below the junction. As we seen in our previous video how the solar cell works, there is a two region, that is N region and P region, but the material which have wider band gap, that means the band gap of the material is large, which exposed to the solar radiation, so that there is a maximum possibility to generate the electron hole pair, and also there is a more recombination of electron hole pair, so that we will get the maximum amount of electricity. That means there is a maximum amount of absorption of the photons. So the wider band gap material is exposed to the sunlight, and the smaller band gap material is below that. So this is the criteria for the material of that semiconductor. Next is the metal semiconductor Schottky junction solar cell. When a contact is made between metal and a semiconductor, either a ohmic contact or a rectifying contact is formed depending on the work functions of the metal and semiconductor. We know that particular metal has its work function, also semiconductor has a work function. So depending on that, the ohmic contact or rectifying contact is formed between metal and semiconductor. That means when we place the metal and semiconductor near, when they are in contact, there is a formation of ohmic contact or rectifying contact. So these are two possibilities, that is ohmic or rectifying contact, and these depend on the work function of that metal and semiconductor. The rectifying contact is known as a Schottky junction. That means the rectifying contact is nothing but the Schottky junction. The Schottky junction has a depletion layer and built-in electric field on the semiconductor side of the junction. That means for the Schottky junction there is a deflection layer, same as in the diode or in the p-n junction, and built-in electric field on the semiconductor side of the junction. Next is the p-n multi-junction solar cells. As a photon is most efficiently absorbed when its energy is close to the band gap, an intelligent way to absorb more photon energy is stack junctions of different band gaps, what is known as a multi-junction structure. That means we know that when we incident the solar radiation on the solar cell, there is absorption of the photon. As a photon is most efficiently absorbed when its energy is close to the band gap, those photons are absorbed whose energy is equal to the band gap of that semiconductor material. And an intelligent way to absorb more photon energy is to stack junction of the different band gaps. If we stack the material with the different band gaps, so there is a more probability to absorb the more photons, so that the energy of that photon is nearly equal to the different band gap of that material. That means that is variation in the photon energy, so that if we vary the band gap of the if we vary material with a different band gap, so we are able to absorb maximum photons, so we are able to generate the maximum electricity. So this is known as the multi-junction structure. The top junction has a relatively wider band gap followed by one or more junction in the decreasing order of band gaps. As we seen, the top junction, which the top the top material, that means the material which is present at the top of the solar cell, which has a wider band gap, which should be have wider band gap, and below that there is a decreasing band gap order. So this is the arrangement in the p-n multi-junction solar cells. Next is the fifth one, MIS, that is a metal insulator semiconductor solar cells. The MIS solar cell is a modification of metal semiconductor Schottky junction solar cell. That means it is just modification of the metal semiconductor Schottky junction. That means in a metal semiconductor we place the metal and semiconductor near, and there is a contact between the metal and semiconductor, and after that there is a formation of the Schottky junction. Similarly, in the MIS semiconductor all this happens, that is a metal insulator semiconductor. In that solar cell there is a insulator material which is sandwiched between the metal and semiconductor. That means at the one side of the insulator there is a metal, and at the another side there is a semiconductor material, and after that there is a formation of the Schottky junction. A thin layer of 10 to 20 angstrom of insulator such as a titanium oxide is placed between metal and semiconductor. In MIS semiconductor, a thin layer of tin oxide means SnO2, which is the tin oxide and which is the insulator, and the layer of that material, that is the thickness of that material is near about 10 to 20 angstrom, and which is placed in between metal and semiconductor, so that there is a formation of the junction. So this is the metal insulator semiconductor solar cells. Next one is the SIS, that is a semiconductor insulator semiconductor solar cells. The SIS solar cell is a modification of MIS solar cell. It means it is just a modification of the metal insulator semiconductor. In a metal insulator semiconductor solar cell, only the insulator is sandwiched between metal and semiconductor, but in the SIS solar cell the insulator is sandwiched between two semiconductor material. So only the difference is that in a MIS solar cell, on the both side of the insulator there is a semiconductor material. This is the diagrammatic representation of the MIS and SIS solar cell. If we consider the first, that is the MIS, and which is shown in the first figure, that is the left hand figure, which is the semiconductor. There is a semiconductor material is sandwiched between, that is the black region is the is the insulator, and this insulator is sandwiched between the semiconductor and the metal, that is the MIS solar cells. And in right hand diagram, the black region, that is the insulator, is sandwiched between two semiconductor material. So there is a formation of SIS solar cell, that is a semiconductor insulator solar cell. So this is all about the different types of the solar cells, and which depends on the configuration, that is a formation of junction between them due to different material configuration. So these all are the types of the solar cells. And second one is the different types of the solar cell, which depends on the material which is used in a construction. So depending on that, solar cell also have different types. So in our next video we will discuss these two different types which depends on the material constructed material. So we will continue with that in our next video.